Hello, welcome to Square Base Show with your hosts, Rob and Val. In this triumphant return to the airwaves, we're going to be talking about the future of the old world.
Is the future now, Rob? Or is it soon?
The future is now. For sure. I mean, so much to go through. We're definitely going to be covering both the reactions to the match play guide and Cathay. But then obviously later in this video, and both our personal reflections and also a conversation about what the wider community has been up to. But in relation to that, later on, we'll be talking about where we think we're going to see the old world going in the next 6 months, maybe the next year. So actually an incredible amount to break out and talk about. Before we do anything else though, buddy, how have you been? Chat, comments, how have you been?
It's too much, Rob. It's too much going on. I had hoped beyond hope after we had gone on our run of like Wood Elves, Beastmen, boom, Cathay, match play guide. We're just getting filled at left, right. And I was like, please, Lord, no more. Like we don't need our FAQ errata this week. We could just take a chill pill, right, guys? We could just like catch our breath for a second. Wrong. GW doesn't care. They were like, we're just going to pour this gasoline on the fire. And boom, we got the FAQ errata, full-blown 1.5. Maybe this could be our fourth episode with 1.5. Is it coming in the thumbnail?
Well, it's here.
It's here, I guess. But maybe we could get a little meta about it. I don't know. But it is here.
Maybe we could have us in front of one of our old thumbnails.
That's I love that idea. Especially if it was everything we ever tell you is right. Never doubt us again.
Yeah. Okay. Well, lots to go through there. So one of the things, obviously, because you were busy for the portion of the day when the FAQ came out, we wanted to get through it as fast as possible. So, kind of, what's been your takeaway from the FAQ? Like, how do you feel about it, and what have been your initial thoughts before we go any further?
Initial thoughts have been, we did our things that we're looking for hope. Like, what were we hoping for from an FAQ errata? And I think if we went back and checked the tape, they tickled most of our fancies, or a lot of them anyway. And I think there was one big one that seems to have been missing. And I just wanted to comment on it because I think at least I feel like I can read into what the kind of game state they're trying to create, and that was the reduction of threat ranges. I think we both thought that was I think one of our top, if not our top choice, close to it. Am I crazy? I can't remember.
Yeah, well, definitely something I'd have liked to have seen. But
I think what they did instead, or at least the game I think that they're angling for is sort of the hammer and the anvil type idea of rank and flank, where they have given infantry more than I would have expected, to be honest with you. I kind of was starting to assume, especially based on how a lot of the rumors didn't have any offensive output buffs in them. And I know how loaded for stands of the 6th and 7th edition crowd, how loaded giving an extra rank of attacks is, because that was, step up was despised. And a lot of people say it ruins the game, all that kind of stuff. I disagree. So I was worried that they wouldn't juice offensive output; they'd only juice static combat res, and then they did both, and that is exactly what infantry needed. And yes, maneuverability and threat range is an issue for sure, but I think they sort of thematically and game wise, I think they want infantry to be like the hedgehog. You know what I mean? And then there are things that can swoop into it. But it's got a chance now on the table, which is really, really cool. And I've gotten to play a game. Tell about your experiences of playing that game. What army did you play with? Who did you play? What was kicking off? We played a little Renegades. Hotfix coming. And we played Lizardmen versus Dark Elves. My opponent Christian, who's a fan of the show, and I think I'm 0 for 10 against him at this point. I continued that streak by making terrible choices. Totally forgot about Perry. He dispatched me quite well. But it was a lot of fun, and I think it was a really great example of like he just leaned right into infantry. He brought over 1,000 points of core elves, which is a choice. It would have been a tremendously awful choice, but weeks ago, and now at least versus me on that night worked real well.
Christian, check is in the post. Continue on. Thank you. Well done. Keep going. Appreciate that.
But I mean, that's my one terrible game. You've been witnessing the full power of this Death Star.
For sure. Before we do that, though, I just want to ask a couple of things. If people who are watching, who have tuned in and are excited about the future of the old world, or maybe you're new and you haven't heard us talking before, previously what happened is when Games Workshop released the army books for the old world, they broke them up into two sections: official in quotation marks, and another set of armies called Legends, which we call Renegades. Val then earlier this year did an updated Renegades pack so that people could like just some rules clarity, some small amendments to make them a little bit more playable, flavor for sure. But many people, I know for a fact that many people have been asking in the comments on the past few videos about updating the Renegade pack. So could you give us any clarity or insight into kind of your plans and goals for that?
Yes. So I posted about that to Facebook and Reddit, I guess, over a week ago now. Basically there's two elements. One, there's basically a slight update to the legacy pack as it is with some clarification. But then the Renegades also, so all the legacy armies, obviously one of the biggest changes of the FAQ errata was how magic is cast. And so as a result, some things came down in casting cost. And so all of the legacy faction spells, especially, that's kind of like the biggest impact in a negative way on the Renegades. In general, this errata was massive for the legacy factions. As also predicted in the Renegade preamble, I suspected that if infantry ever got juiced, legacy factions will as well. And I think that's exactly what's happened. So anyway, there's going to be a standalone document I'm gonna put out with just like vanilla, what I would call like vanilla tweaks to those casting spells. And my hope is that even the crustiest amongst us, the anti-renegades who don't want to play with any changes, would at least find those acceptable as far as tweaks to the magic is concerned. And so that will be posted on squarebase.com. I would say in the coming days, if not already up by the time you see this. And again, there's just minor tweaks to casting values and things like that. And I tried my best to look at spreadsheets of adjustments made in the core army erratas, so that way the Renegades, wherever possible, are mirroring that.
Yeah, I'd like to also let people know that I was pushing behind the scenes, or I have been pushing for Val in the future, which I'm going to just say, I don't know where you're at with it at the moment. One day of seeing Arcane Journals for Renegades. Obviously, that's a lot of work and maybe not something you're planning at all, but I think that's an interesting thing. Because one of the things I did say from the FAQ, I felt like that they did just go after what they thought were the most offensive elements of the game. You can't have that 2-up save on the dragon. Trollhammer torpedoes, they were like, do you know what? We're going to deal with you a little bit. The Trollhammer torpedo is where I was like, I know that they're looking at stuff they think are a little bit too much. I'm not saying Trollhammer torpedoes were, but they went down to Mort Cult. They put up Dragon Ogres like a negligible amount, and that was obviously, it could have been more, but still they attacked points, if that makes sense.
Do you think you're personally responsible for the lack of any changes to the Green Knight? Is it possible JTY was personally trolling you by completely ignoring the Green Knight?
Well, because of my hashtag ban the Green Knight.
Hashtag ban the Green Knight. And just like, of all the things to just skate by, like almost as if it's a ghost.
Yes.
And
he was asleep. He's asleep. You can't hurt him.
Right? Like it was absolutely wild. Yes, and like, and then there's like the points changed to Dragon Ogres. How do you find the number 3? How was that divined? I really want to know how that spreadsheet worked. Because but I will say this. I don't know. I think you may have asked for or looked for some points rebalancing. I was saying to friend of the show, Peter the Falcon, that if this was 8th edition 40K, what they would have done was a massive systemic change and then nerfed every unit based on the old meta.
Yeah.
That's what would have happened in like back in the day playing 8th edition 40K. And I assume that's still happening occasionally in the rebalance patches. And they would have adjusted points based on a game that no longer existed. And it seems to me like they resisted that temptation on this. And whether or not that was a conscious choice, I think it is the right move. Now we do get to see how the chips fall here, because the MPG is awesome, and it genuinely changes how you approach and play the game without taking away the Warhammeriness. And then you can't deny that the core the way the core mechanics have been adjusted also significantly changed the game. So keeping the points more or less as is. Can't front on that.
Okay, so and do you think there's also scope for like one of the things I highlighted was obviously the power of screams. I think that like if we're looking at all the other strong elements inside of the meta, not you, the Green Knight, obviously. If we're looking at the other strong elements of the meta, that was definitely up at that. That contentious tier of maybe that's a little strong, like along with dragons, along with peg knights, along with the Green Knight, like along with big infantry bricks, like the dwarf Death Star, for example. So at that point, do you think that's something that maybe is at least open for conversation? Like, what are your thoughts there?
I think screams, for one thing, I think one of the things that really tools up, really juices screams is magic. And even though casters, especially like have been taken down a notch, that means that things like Spiritual Vortex and the other one that targets a single unit. Spiritual Vortex, by the way, was nerfed, so it no longer stacks. So I think the biggest leadership debuff you can get now on a particular unit would be -5 if you got. I can't remember the other necromancy spell, but basically there's 2 necromancy spells. One gets you -2, one leadership, one gets you -2, and then the scream itself drops -2. So you get to 5, and you used to be able to get to 6, if I do recall correctly. So I think, and then also the fact that those spells themselves are really going to be hard to cast, and especially the one that targets units, because MR now magic resist any unit that matters out there. Guys, just throw MR1 on it. At least it's gonna really mess up a caster's day. I just think in general it's better to see how the chips fall with screams, because I think they've already been subtly nerfed just by the change in the game state as it is. That being said, something like a Banshee is much safer in the world these days because of the fact that Pillar of Fire no longer really exists in any meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can hang out and like, in fact, I think Banshees are probably not the only the only character that can now kind of live outside of a unit in much greater safety, thanks to Pillar of Fire being gone. And so we do need. I'm rarely ever let the meta play out type of guy, but in this case, I would say that we want to see that. I think really the threat from undead, and that I think is Tomb Kings as well as vampire counts, comes down to the fact that they are unkillable infantry. Unkillable, incredible core infantry. So that's your problem right there. I think screams will be less and less the interactivity problem that undead have. And more cult obviously eliminated as well. Renegade pack eliminates stacking of the Mortis engine, so you're not going to get crazy pluses to cast out of vampire counts if you're using Renegade pack. So in a lot of ways, I think screams have been adjusted, and also the problem that undead are about to be in this meta, I think, more has to do with the fact that you just can't kill them. They are in fact undead.
They are in it, and that is the theme, right? The theme is that they are difficult to kill and they res a lot.
I already wasn't losing units, and like I don't know about you. I don't know, and I don't know where the community is coming on this, landing on with this, but the change to regen and its potential application to crumble
I just said that that's not correct at my event at the weekend because I just ran an event.
Yeah, I think that's not especially on Crumble and probably the there's only one part of my brain that was just like, well, what about demons though? Maybe demons can.
My demon prince can have it. That's the only one.
Yeah, if you got the demonic keyword, you can regen your Crumble. But like, what about the other instances? Because like everywhere else that the DPR, to use a parlance from the glossary of the Honest Wargamer network,
Library.
which means
a damage prevention roll.
A damage prevention roll, a regen in Old World, which is basically a save after your saves. So saving each individual
another
wound.
Example. They have at one point they had 3 game systems all with a different name for a save after a save. And I'm like, lads, you could just get together and just call it one thing. It'd be so easy.
I still have to correct it, invulnerable save to ward save every single time. So but the reason I brought that up is just that in those systems, things like wounds that normally you wouldn't get an armor save for, you often would get a DPR or a feel no pain for. Things like dangerous terrain. Like the thing when the cue is you lose a wound, that does trigger. And so applications outside of Crumble, which it seems insane to me that they meant for that interaction to happen with Crumble. But maybe they did, because I think it certainly is supposed to interact with things like a dangerous terrain test. And other losses of wounds that traditionally in fantasy they were just get effed. You don't get a save, right? I don't know how do you feel about it?
Oh, I just carte blanche said on the Crumble, let's not do that, and everything else. I think it seems clear and is okay. Like that was. I don't think we had any undead this weekend. Shout out to Sid who ran a 1-day using the Match Play Guide and FAQ in London. This weekend just gone as well, and if you are around the London area, Bad Moon, that's the space. But he had like 8 undead at his event. And I was like, I don't know. Actually, I haven't caught up with him. I haven't asked if he said no, but I think it's just silly. Like, and it really does feel like, again, I think there's a portion of the community who just like to argue about the color of the sky, and I think that's super important. I think pedantry is important, but it's also just to say, hey, like, I don't care. Like, stop being a silly bollocks. Let's just get on with it. And that's a quick resolution for me. Also works when you get asked questions about a lot of different stuff and you are actually on a timeline. Like if you're in a Discord server or if you're in a Facebook group or if you're online and you're just arguing and it means nothing. But if you are literally asked a question at a table with a clock ticking so people can go home, you genuinely do need a response. Like that's a much different environment. You're like, hey, I actually have got to resolve whatever this conversation is. Let's get it finished. Versus, doesn't matter, we'll come back to this Thursday. You're like, no, actually, I can't come back to this Thursday. So I think sometimes that's also interesting. Like a lot of stuff came up actually over the course of the event I ran over the weekend. As an example, baggage trains deployment compared to terrain and also special features that you bring yourself. So I was like, oh, so I had to put that into a step-by-step.
Where the order of operations that falls.
Yeah, because that doesn't exist as an example. So there is. It's not necessarily that comp is necessary. It's that actual, just like that structure doesn't exist inside of a timeline, and what makes the most sense. And then at that point, you do get a little pedant about that. But I'm super lucky. I've got you to talk to about these things if it comes up. Like you and me just talked about the regen thing. It was a very quick conversation. I was like, regen is dumb, and you were like, yes, and I was like, cool. I was like, conversation finished.
I do say that I do value. I don't value the tonality sometimes of rules conversations, and the way people come in, friggin' double barrels going, and like I guess the lack of composure sometimes demonstrated, but for the most part, like in the chats, I don't know. I was somewhat keeping up with the TSN sort of WhatsApp group chat, which has got a lot. Those are basically all the players. If you ever play at the TSN in Nottingham with Rob, by the way, tickets available. Capachow. And didgeridoo. Down in the description. those were interesting conversations. I found a new way for us to really like 10x our like upsell, man. Every time we reference something that we're plugging, hit the didgeridoo.
I don't know if you're expecting me to rock out the didgeridoo, but it's there. I think. Do you know do you even know it's here?
I'm aware of your 17th YouTube channel about how to didgeridoo. It's fantastic. The honest didgeridoos.
It's called the didgeridoos and didgeridon'ts with Rob from The Honest Wargamer. That's the title of the YouTube channel.
So I don't even know. Oh, anyway, just the conversation around parsing all of these rules, because quite frankly, I would say from a general like actual quality of rules writing, I would have said that 1.5 would have been acceptable maybe as a 1.0. That's like that's kind of where like this is where I feel like I would have been okay with the game starting and then being errated in fact from here. So like, but we got here, and I think it did take a lot of gnashing of teeth and pedantry to, I think, come to a lot of consensus around some of the weirder interactions where, like you said, you just need an answer.
Yeah.
I do want to call out. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, I would love to call it. Someone in chat mentioned with the crumble thing, which I think is, again, we'll see how it pans out. Just that with so much extra combat res present in the game, it might be a situation where undead does crumble like crazy, and perhaps that is why they added they kept the language loose around crumble and regen. Just because maybe they'll be, if you're losing combats by a wider margin because you're not dealing a lot of damage, not looking at you, Graveguard probably doesn't have this problem. But like zombies and things, maybe they just do crumble uncontrollably. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm interested to see how it plays.
That's been the mature conversation I've been trying to have with like a lot of the player base. We're going to move into now the reactions of the community to both the FAQ and the match play guide. And if at this point you'd like to voice your reactions in the comments below to either of those two things, we'd love to read them. I'm going to try and reply to each one of these ones because I'm really interested to know what everyone else is thinking. But definitely the mature conversation I've been having with a lot of this is, and as a response to Cathay as well, I'd like to do each one in turn, but I'd like to get your takes on them first. I've just been trying to say to people, this is exactly what you and me talked about at the beginning of the game. Everyone was like, this. And I was like, why don't you put it on the table and play it? And then we got people to put it on the table and play it. And people were like, I'm having a great time. And then there were wrinkles and there were problems for sure, which we talked about in a bunch of different ways. And we've covered in like our FAQ videos and things we'd like to see. And not all of them were solved in this FAQ, and not all of them were addressed. But ultimately, past year and a half, dragons and everything else to the side, it's been an evolving meta that's been that's had like all sorts of surprises and wrinkles and things pop up. It showed that people who show the showing of skill, why can't I figure out the thing I talk about all the time? Skill expression. People who show high skill expression continuously do well. So it's not just pure power picks and pure this is the best army. We've definitely had some stuff like float towards the top, but even then we haven't had enough events or enough data. And I was speaking to Falcon, who was over last week, and I've spoken to you loads. We haven't had enough data to just be like, no, you take that army to an event, you will win the event. That was just not a situation that occurred in the past 18 months, even if it wasn't the best version of the game, and maybe this new version is. So my first bit, before we talk about the reactions, I probably should have put this at the end, is, and what I've been saying for the past couple of weeks is, stick it on the table, lads, and see what it happens. Lads, ladies, MBs. Just stick it on the table. Have a fun time with it. So before we go any further, like we'll go back in time to the first part. How do you feel about the reaction to Cathay? What's your thoughts and feelings about that from the wider community?
For one thing, I think maybe our hot takes, which were incredibly widely viewed, maybe it had a little bit of an impact on the initial reaction, not to overstate our impact, but I do think they did. Because as we were reading through that, one thing about Cathay is that it has very few units, and so it has an incredibly high density of rules. not to understate this point again, but again, when they had to write the 50 pages, and they filled the 50 pages. And they needed to have the rules. So like those units got a ton of rules. I think the sum of their parts though is not an S tier army. Like they're not going to be insane. There is a lot of people talking a lot of smack about running a ton of balloons. Okay. You want to drop $1,000 or $2,000 on a bunch of balloons. Let's see it. But like overall, I think the reaction to Cathay was more just like the disparity in the creativity and like the amount of rules that Cathay got, and say where armies like High Elves and Empire are. Notwithstanding the half of the people who love the Legacy armies the most, and the condition of a lot of those rules in the Legacy PDF. So when you see I feel like there was just maybe some like, well, what about me in that, and also some pearl clutching around how OP they may or may not be. And I think as Cathay actually gets out into the wild, I think it'll be very quickly revealed that yes, they might have a lot of rules, but you can only ever be one thing at one time. You know what I mean? And I think ultimately Cathay will just it'll be another opponent, another different challenge for you on the table, and I think they're okay.
Yeah, I think starting from like the beginning, obviously when we did our review, a special shout out and thank you to everyone who watched it. Super cool of you. But also let's take some personal responsibility. I think when we were talking about it, we were excited. It was very fun. And we were like, this is very cool and very good. Yes. Yes. But also I think, and I hope we put in context many times, 12 cannons might be good, or 6 cannons shooting twice might be good, but also you won't have like anything to screen them; they'll get murdered.
Sure.
Like
also very hard to even just fit into an army. Period. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We talked about all the different elements and about how I think we contextualized it, but people do absolutely run wild. So an apology, at least from me, but I don't think it's overtly necessary because like. They do tend, there's a lot of diatribe on the internet, and people do tend to listen to something that's like, when we see a unit that could shoot a cannon twice, you're like, that's pretty good. That's just genuinely pretty good. Like in context of an army and playing it on the tabletop versus something with no dragons or no monsters or anything, maybe it's not as good, right? Also on a board with a lot of terrain, it's also not as good, right? Also played by an idiot, also not as good, right? But all of those things, people are like, no, that's OP and we'll win every game. I'm like, that's not how the old world works.
Like even a board with no terrain, like getting cannons line of sight to stuff is hard just because of your own units, right? Like, so I think a lot of it too. Like, look at Miao Ying. Yeah, I think I got her right. Like, she's got 3 pages of rules, and they're all fascinating, interesting, and seemingly powerful rules. But when I actually got her on the table, I quickly realized that although she is a level 4 and a level 2, a dragon and an awesome caster, she can only be those things one at a time. You know what I mean?
And she's most often a dragon being a level 2.
Yeah, that's right. And, suddenly 500 points for her ish seems okay. Like she's got versatility and like she can come back and like can regain wounds. But anyway, it just felt it felt a lot more reasonable once I was actually using it. Although I am a bit of a dum-dum when it comes to Warhammer, especially the first time I play with something. So that's fine. It takes me a long time to pick up how to use something. But I would say that like a real takeaway with something like Cathay is don't dismiss it out of hand. Yes, they got good rules. I'm sorry a lot of armies don't have rules written of that caliber and quality. But I think because they actually are good rules, I think they probably play well into the existing meta, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, actually, I can give you the world's first exclusive. I ran new match play guide event this weekend, and if you don't know, friend of the show Toby has for several, maybe a couple of years now, has been paying a 3D sculptor to design him a Cathayan, but I'm going to say Chinese for IP purposes. Chinese, and panda orientated Cathay army, right? So like his Ogre-Loaders are pandas, right?
The pandas all the way down.
It's just pandas all the way down. And then he's had them, and he's been playing them for nearly a year, fully painted, but playing them as like Empire. Mm-hmm. Which led to this very, very funny moment where Owen, shout out to Owen, great guy as well, he was playing like a test game with New Cathay, but he was using all Empire. And he was like, oh, this is the most Empire-looking Cathay army. And Toby was like, that's not even the most Cathay-looking Empire army I've ever seen. It was fun. Anyway. But yeah, so Toby had it fully painted, ready to rock. And he was like, do you mind if I use them launch weekend, which was this weekend just gone?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, absolutely not. But let's just I'm gonna get a bit of oversight on the list. So like, do you know what I mean? I was just like, let's have a conversation about what you're going to take, because I think definitely someone has bought a ticket, they're coming to an event, they're playing an army that's just come out that day. Would that
even just from like being unfamiliar with it perspective?
Exactly, exactly. He's also just like he's just
probably a sweet man.
Yeah, for sure. He'd be like, it does this. I can do this, just so you know. And I think everyone will agree with that statement who's played against him. So, but he had a 50% win rate. So perfectly balanced, technically, legally, worldwide. He's both the best and worst Cathay player in the world. So, which I think is pretty good. So yeah, that was a really fun time. And I got to see them play. And his kind of feedback was Miao Ying. She spends most of her time as a dragon, so really have a level 2. Right, so he's like, I definitely need a Longma to like back her up. He was using double Sentinels, and he was saying, "Yep, the Sentinels were fine, but they would often get smashed." You know, there was a moment where 2 Dragon Ogres, shout out to Paul, 2 Dragon Ogres went into 2 Sentinels, and both of them got monster killing blowed off the board. The Dragon Ogres did. The Shaggoths went in because we were playing 2,600 points. The infantry blocks, we'll talk about that kind of after. But yeah, like generally it was fine, and it was really nice to have it on the table, and people were enjoying the experience and having a chat about it and talking to Toby about it as well, and just kind of like getting it out there. So I think that's a kind of nice place for it to settle straight off the bat. I'd also follow up. Go on, after you.
Oh, no. I think one thing that, I don't know if it popped out of me at the show, but certainly as I digested Cathay a bit, although like Longmas are sweet looking models and also like data sheets or unit cards, and Yao Ming seems cool. They don't have a lot of casting buffs as they stand right now. And that's pluses to cast or even rerolls or anything. Rerolls in general in that army, not really around. No. So like I think one of the things that I realized that as the like very like a lot of the big emotions were coming out about how strong this army may or may not be. I just remembered back to some of the OP shit I've seen in my day for Warhammer.
Proper OP
shit in general doesn't miss. It never fails, you know? Like that's proper OP shit. It's stuff that doesn't ever not work.
Yeah.
So things that are automatic, things that are completely uninteractive, that ain't Cathay. Cathay's got tons of good rules, but it's not automatic. And I think they're in actually a kind of a real tough spot with Magic right now. And this is immediately after the shift. Aside from their awesome bounce spell item that lets them cast
the stick.
That lets them cast +3 on the -2 armor save 1. My brain sucks. But anyway, so that's Cathay. I don't know. I think we got it. Hopefully, as people get all their stuff painted up, because holy cow, there sure is a lot of people like new and existing that bought a ton of Cathay. So
yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that as well, because I got some complaints. But before I do that, I'd just like to say I was disappointed by the community. I want to be really clear. I don't want to be the dad who steps up into your room.
You are the Warhammer dad.
Yeah, and it's happening. I'm going to say I'm disappointed. I'm also disappointed in the general discourse as well, and that's from everyone inside the sphere. One of the things that I really love about what you do, and hopefully I do, is open the conversation. Like I live stream. We're talking about this now. We're live streaming. The YouTube comments are full of you, and we always say, "Hey, please leave your comments and talk about what's going on. We opened dialogue. And what I hated seeing was people shutting down conversations. People being like, yeah, game's over. 6 balloons will win. And you're like, okay. No one's built one. Like, it's crazy. It's fucking crazy to go online and be like, that's it. The game's over. This army will always win. Right? We've never seen that ever. Number one, also, it's like £1 million to do that. And sure, maybe people 3D print balloons for sure, right? But like, I felt it really disingenuous to like just shut the conversation down so aggressively so early. That seemed wild. Instead of we're only a year and a half into the game, and listen, I'm so excited and so proud, and also was always fucking correct that this game was going to explode. Right? I was like, it's going to explode. It's going to explode. And it's exploding, and it's massive. And I went into the local game store the other day to pick up some Cathay stuff, and I was like, hey, how's this selling? And he was like, pretty good. I was like, let me just be clear. Is this pretty good in context to Space Marines, or is this pretty good in context to Necromunda? Because it's Necromunda. It's just a niche side game. And he was like, oh yeah, it's selling like Space Marines. And I was like, okay. Readjust your mindset, lads, right? Like, refocus. So like, I felt a year and a half in, a titanic explosion, loads of people playing, tournaments, events, all sorts of stuff popping off. I felt it really disingenuous to see, and disappointing to see the community shutting down so aggressively so quickly. I was like, that's not what we are. We need to build up, right? Gotta
get more vast. We need a bastion of vastness out there. And I think, there's going to be a lot of like just people, and this is all Warhammer, where Warhammer is fundamentally aspirational, right? Like, we all think about it a lot more than we do any of it. I think that it is the ultimate brain worm, right? So we're all fantasizing about the models we're going to hobby up, the games we're going to play, whatever our dreams are in this game. We spend most of our time with those dreams, and some of us get to actually, actualize them, get the army on the table, and play the tournament or hang out with your buds, whatever it might be. But for the most part, we're stuck behind a keyboard, doing the rest of our life and not getting to do the things we want. And we also, as a result, I think Warhammer for a lot of people is incredible. Despite it being a game, you have to be in the world with somebody for the most part and play against a human being. There's no like computer version that can play against you. Despite this being a fundamentally social game, we spend a lot of time with ourselves building up what we think it is, right? And I think that to me is one of the reasons why I love tournaments, because they're an instant reality check on that. Like, the game is what it is when a bunch of people show up and try and play it to win. I think for this, there was just so much that avalanched, and also so much hype around what the game could be. So if you had a very personal idea of what direction the game should go, and that including your opinions on what Cathay should look like, or what an Errata or an FAQ should look like, and suddenly it wasn't that, well, now you've got this like you have this unmet expectation. You have this like tearing in your brain, and you're upset. Whereas I think at launch, when we had a pretty broken game in a not a good way, released and dumped, a lot of people were just shocked it was here. You know what I mean? Like, I think they announced it like 6 weeks before, like they actually like dropped the box on us, right? And like, people were there was just general enthusiasm. It was like that first lockdown in the pandemic. People were out on their porches, banging their pots and pans, supporting people. But we're 18 months in now. Like, people are skeptical and maybe getting a little too locked into their own like mindset on things.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just come out. Like, let's hype. Like, also, can we move on to legitimate Cathay complaints now? Because I have them.
Sure.
I have them. All right,
let's have it.
Number one, what the fuck? Have you tried to build any?
No, I don't have. I don't. I am not building any.
I am furious. Number one, the mold lines on the infantry.
Really?
Insane. Like, they're not something you can't scrape off. They're just fucking everywhere. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm sick of this.
That's nice that they're sticking to the tradition. Like that is carrying on a long-standing tradition of just having a mold line just directly in someone's face.
Yeah.
I think that's that feels like fantasy.
They didn't have that on the infantry, especially. It's like always on the boot, or like I had to, because I did
like
the
hamstring.
I did the head, the hamstring, and I did the heads, and there's just this little one that goes over each fucking head, and I was like, as I was doing like the 40th head, I was like, my life is awful. What am I doing? So that's legit.
That's my general perspective. Building anything, building for me is monotony. But yeah.
So that's legit complaint number one. And also that plays through. Also the longbow, I don't think goes together super well, or at least I didn't think the longbow went together super well. And the balloons take like, I built 2 balloons, I think, over 18 hours. No, not that long, 15 hours. But I did also have a fever, so who knows? But time is a flat circle. Yeah, I was like, this is taking forever. And also, you have to build it in some.
Why are my fingernails so long?
So that's complaint number one. But complaint number two, and this is the most legit complaint. So I was in the hospital on Monday, and while I was in the A&E waiting room, I brought my little Cathay book with me, and I was like, I was going to read this, right? Mm-hmm. So I read the lore, and it's the most, like, you're talking about like OP. It's the most, these are the greatest guys you've ever met. Like, I don't know if you know this, but like, like, are they good? You're like, oh, their society is so good. And like, everyone's real nice. And you're like, okay. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, and also, by the way, like their war machines better than the dwarves. They suck. They met some elves. They suck. They went over to some basic humans. They suck. It's literally, I was like, okay, as I was getting to like near the last bit of the lore, I was like, I'm going to find the secret of like, where's the Zinchian undertone, or like the flaw in the society that's like the structure around it. And unless there's some sort of like, they're ran by a dragon who has complete control and we're not allowed to talk about it. But the dragon's also dope. So, and like looks after their people. It's like they're constantly
incredibly benevolent.
Yeah, incredibly benevolent, and like make their people as good as possible. And I was a bit like, what? Do you know what I mean? Like there was no flaw.
That I think this is probably a bigger threat to Cathay is like a tone deaf and boring lore launch. And I think this, I think we talked about this actually, where when a faction is first released and it's sort of like whatever the rules writer studio is, that's taken the first swing at the piñata. I think a lot of the times they're very flat and tonally not interesting, and that's where a lot of things start. Like Tau 40K Tau started from literally that place where they were, and maybe for similar reasons that they have actually Tau and 40K have a lot of the similar themes to Cathay actually in Old World, from like a harmony, working together, like somewhat the good guys in this crazy universe. And I think over time, as layers were added to that, as like not actual writers, but full-time writers, people who write narratives for a living, Black Library and others, as they got their hooks into that, Tau became a lot more interesting and nuanced. And I suspect that's going to take some time for Cathay. Because yes, the lore that I have also dabbled in feels the same way, but I do feel that like rules wise, it very much hints at a chaotic influence, because there are so many similarities. I don't know on purpose or not between Chaos and Cathay, but I don't know. I think there's just so much opportunity there, but all their villains. This is the other problem I think, is like all the villains that Cathay is used to fighting, which I think is mostly like ogres and Skaven. I think and I guess Chaos. Like those are their opponents. Like 2 of those 3 are just not existent right now, which is a bummer.
Yeah, I was a bit like, oh, okay. The one bit that I loved from the lore, and if no one's read it, it turns out then the ogres are being slightly too expansive. They gave the Sky Titans, who the ogres were fighting at the time, they gave them black powder weapons, which is what the ogres, when they eventually kill them, take and that's where they get their iron blasters and stuff from. And I was also really hype. I was like, ogres mentioned. But also, I didn't know that they brought in a warpstone meteor that destroyed that landed and created the Great Maw. I didn't know that Cathay did that. And I was
Cathay just did that.
Yeah, Cathay just did that. And I was like, is this the first time that's been mentioned? Or has that always been in the lore? I don't know. Someone in the comments let me know.
How can you just be bathing yourself in warpstone and not be succumbing to the taints of chaos? It just doesn't line up for me.
Well, we're
gonna have to do it. We're gonna have to do a Cathayan lore thing.
Yeah, for sure.
The moon is made of cheese. I'm aware of this, and they just lopped off a little slice. Maybe that's why they attract all them delicious rat men.
Yeah, so that's my complete number 2. They're too OP in the lore. Like, they're too good. I was like, okay, cool. Because it felt like they were like, the Elves of Ulthuan, lame. Dwarves, lame. I'm like, aren't these the ancient races? But they're not. Cathay, or the dragons, at least, are the ancient race.
Yeah, they're the ancientest. They're the most ancient. Yeah, there's a bit of Mary Sue Grey Knight thing going on here, too.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Everyone else is the oldest, but these guys are the oldest.
Yeah.
You know, which I think also from a lore perspective, also provides so much opportunity, too, though. Because before you only really had the Slan that like went back as far, and the only Slan that actually was able to like potentially remember that. Well, he looks like this, people. He's on hard times. His name is Lord Croak, and he's really just mostly dead. He's not all dead. He's mostly dead. Okay. And like that's the biggest connection to like the ancient history. But now there's all these dragons that in theory have been around the whole time.
Yep.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, also, I did actually wonder as well if we were seeing a recentering of the game. Like, you know,
what's that?
Like before the death of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, I think it's fair to say the center of the game was Empire.
It was the old world. Yeah.
That was the center of the game. But I don't know if what we're actually going to see is a recentering of the game around Cathay. Like, you know, with their new, this is actually the middle of the world now, and then we're going to explore around those bits. You know, and in many ways, what we know of, the world legend, the dudes over there, they're doing their thing. We know them from the past. There's all the models. Are we going to explore outwards? Are we going to move into these sections instead of going back and revisiting some of those?
This is a whole show, but I think we've chatted about it together. But I mean, if you look at the AOS model releases, I'd say the original plan is exactly what you just said. What have we seen? We're seeing Chaos Dwarfs coming back. They're right next door. We've seen the first refreshes to Ogres. We've seen Gitz Mob, which I think clearly are supposed to be the Khanate, whatever the
on the map.
Khanate hobgoblins on the map in the old world map. You know, like I think there was a vision to really shift, like pan the camera out and have like more of a focus on the East, because those miniatures are being redone. And even Skaven, an antagonist of Cathay, redone, right?
Yeah.
But old world at some point, and the strategy and the launch around it, and they bend over backwards in a lot of those roundtables to talk about how this is a game that's focused on the old world itself. We're in the old, like in one of the Cathay Q&As, there was a line something along the lines of Cathay is a massive, expansive place, and we could spend an entire game exploring that area, but we're not going to. Or like, not that we're gonna, or something like that, right? Whereas like, why not? Like, just campaign and source book it, go for it, guys. But anyway, so yeah, I think that was the original intent. I think Old World, as released in 1.0, they really pulled that back, and they tried to put it in its place, and we're breaking free of those chains.
That would make a lot of sense. Okay, so moving on, we then can start talking about the response to the match play guide. Now, interestingly, and very much kind of a behind the scenes that me and Val talk about a lot, whenever you start talking about events and tournaments, and we might even see a drop in the people watching this video at this exact moment. Because
we don't say that word.
Because when we put the match play guide, we talked about that as well. We covered that. Now, it did not have the level of response that Cathay did. Now, that kind of makes sense, I guess. The match play guide is really only geared towards the people who are playing the game. There's a lot more people interested in the old world than are people who also play the old world.
Oh, I see. 100%.
So that's kind of, you know, an interesting dichotomy of Warhammer, and there's so many more people into it than do the thing that I think both of us think is Warhammer, which is build your models, paint your models, or, you know, get someone to build them, get someone to pay them, whatever, and then eventually go play a game with them.
Max Dubois, Hellfire Minis.
Yeah. Max Dubois is still around.
Max Dubois is currently fighting with UPS to get all of my Cathay miniatures released to him.
Shout out to Max Dubois. Worst table boss in the world. Love him.
Perhaps the worst of all time, but an immaculate painter. And I will be very proud to have a Max Dubois army. So, yeah.
So, the Match Play Guide reaction. What was your personal reaction to it at the time? And how do you feel about the community's response to the Match Play Guide?
So, I think one thing that maybe limits its uptake is just the fact that it's called a matched play guide, right? Okay. So I think for people who, again, people have strong identities in this game, and a lot of people be like, well, I'm not a tournament person, right? So therefore, this particular product is not targeted at me. You know, I'm a narrative gamer, I'm a casual gamer, whatever, which is too bad, because what the match play guide really gives you is a bunch of different modalities for the game. And it gives you different ways to play the game and just fun stuff to use. So I think that's the too bad thing. And I think because of the fact that the fact and Errata came out, it stole the thunder from the match play guide. I think in I was really hoping that we would get Cathay and the match play guide released into the world, and then the FAQ Errata would happen, because I think almost as like game changing and excitement inducing as the FAQ Errata is, the match play guide is right up there, 50-50, holding hands, skipping through the timeline. Like it's a big deal as far as like how the game feels and plays.
It's a bigger deal than Cathay.
Certainly, like Cathay's one army of what, 18 now, right? Like it's just like the odds of you ever playing Cathay, not great. You know, so like I think I think it got drowned out in like just this tidal wave of content, like this insane tidal wave of content. Like those, I don't know. Next time we'll see a couple weeks like we just saw, like those last 2 months, probably more stuff in those last 2 months than like any given year of a previous Warhammer Fantasy edition. You know, like it was wild. So I think that's maybe why it was muted, and also people selecting out because, again, it's match play. That's not for me. Whereas really it's just some awesome new missions and like some cool new things, and like how excited is everyone about building their baggage train for their cabbages? Me cabbages. And by the way, I was so sad that I wasn't there for, or was I there?
You were there for the me cabbages. Yeah.
I was there for cabbages. I don't know. we're like half parasocial, half actually social, because like I do watch a lot of your other stuff too. So like it's a bit challenging for me to know what is real
when you're there. I love the idea that you're watching yourself on a Square Base show and you're agreeing with yourself. You're like, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy
he's got some ideas.
This guy's got ideas that I agree with a lot.
But like, I don't know. So to me, it was muted. I think generally positive. I don't think I saw a backlash against it, especially since it does introduce things that sometimes people feel aren't very fantasy or Warhammery, like objectives and stuff. But it felt fairly non-controversial for those who engaged with it, and exciting for most. What about you? How do you think people reacted to it?
I think the reaction to it was muted, like you said, because it came out at the same time as Cathay, which I think is a huge disservice to what it is. And I'm really disappointed, not in the player base at this point, but like obviously everyone wants to be really excited about the new Cathay stuff. Are you going to get it? Is it going to sell out? Are people really excited about that as well? Like in the morning, they were like, is it going to sell out? What's the situation? We had people making YouTube videos being like, Cathay's a flop because it didn't sell in our store. People responded badly to that. There was like an ongoing news cycle of like, of stuff around the Cathay stuff, and the whole time just chundering in the background is a badly named book with incredibly good ideas. Hated the name of the book. Like, I think everything you've said is correct there. If it had been like, battle plans or missions or something, they're so close. I really feel like SDS is about to hit the gold mine when it comes to expansions. I'm going to put expansions in quotation marks, where they're going to do this kind of Osprey historicals version of these 48-page books, which they can just be like, here's a little nugget of a fight in this section of the world. Here's some scenarios and missions for it. Yeah, the match play guide, I think, was a mistake. But they ultimately did also create a match play guide. Like, it is what it says on the tin. They gave really great guidance for a bunch of people to help start running events. And actually, that's really, really important. We're a year and a half in. Again, ladies and gentlemen, like we're a year and a half in. Some people will only have just finished painting their armies that they got after launch. Yeah. So we've got to be really conscious of the fact that there's loads of people in little areas that are like, oh, are you going to start an event? Are you going to start an event? Are we going to start an event? Are we going to do a club night? There's going to be loads of stuff where people are still building it up. And, I saw that from the huge response that the 500 point foray pack had.
Yeah.
Because people were just like, oh, thank you, I can start, and they feel like it's a nice gateway, a nice stepping stone to start playing. So, yeah, the response was very underwhelmed. Apart from those people who are already event goers or tourney players, and they were started hobbying up their cabbage trains day one. They were like, I'm starting, and that was incredible as well. Like, especially the plans people have, like running the match play event that we just had at the weekend. People were just like, no, I haven't done mine yet. I've got this plan. I've ordered this thing. I'm waiting for it to come.
It's wild.
Yeah. Also, we've now got the hands down best award you get to do at every event, which is the best baggage train.
Best baggage train.
It
is such folks, if you don't already have some fantasy version of what your baggage train will be one day, it is wild to me how quickly and enthusiastically people are like, oh, a piece of terrain that I get to make to represent my army that just sits on the table, and immediately run out to the store. I'm gonna get some. I had people hitting me up for bases, because I'm lucky. I got a nice 3D printer. Like, hey, can you give me a couple bases? I need to make baggage trains for all of my armies. So I was like, what? I've just been parking old 8th edition minis that didn't make the cut into Old World as my baggage train, and everyone's just so excited. It's awesome. And what is it? It's just a rule that it's a rule they invented, and it bred excitement, and it's it gives you, we talk about skill expression, but creative expression is so big, right? And it allows you to theme or add a flavorful element to your army that has, very limited scope on anything else. And it's just a cool excuse to make a diorama, basically. Oh, and people are very excited.
We should run a best baggage train comp, from Square Based. Absolutely. Yeah.
What do we... Yeah,
let's do it. We'll work it out.
A baggage train, and you get a burlap sack of cabbages as the win.
That's the prize.
As the prize.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The excitement that it fostered was really tangible. And I mean, that's great. Especially with the response that you sometimes can get to the main studio's yearly rules updates, where they don't necessarily encourage you to add something to your army. Actually, it really reminded me, specifically of Age of Sigmar at the moment, where with Age of Sigmar, they're doing this thing which, mentally on the face of it, you're like, oh, that's cool, where they're making sure across the whole of this edition, they're making sure every army has a terrain feature, and they have their own endless spells manifestations. So when you jump into the game, you can pick both those up, but unfortunately they're not elective, right? They're you need the terrain. I mean, yes and no. At the high end of Age of Sigmar, or even the middle end, sometimes no. Maybe it's just not good enough. Maybe it gives you an advantage to your opponent, actually. So there's a whole convo for sure. But you're like, okay, those are the things that I should be taking, I guess. Whereas with the Old World, what I like about this, and again, it's elective, right? You don't have to play with the baggage train secondary, and only 4 of the missions require, say that's when you should play them. It's one of those things where it's not hey, buy the thing off us. It's make a thing yourself. And I think that's the power of SDS, and we see that in the Arcane Journals, kit bash your Black Orc on your chariot, kit bash, your woodsman for your high elves, kit bash, do something, hobby.
Be creative.
Yeah. Yeah,
and also not treating your customers like chumps. And I think that's. I'm not saying that SDS is innocent of this in any way, shape, or form, but in general, Games Workshop, I think we've talked about this a lot, has very low self-esteem about how much their customers actually want to do this.
Yeah.
And so they for whatever reason, and probably because it works, they often will release things in FOMO boxes or what have you, or they will do things like you just said, where you want people to buy more things to add to their existing armies, so you institute a change that requires people to buy something new, right?
Mhm.
Rather than incentivizing players to try something new, they force them to, right? And I think what SDS has been doing a really good job of is creating incentives to do new things. That's the concept of the Arcane Journals. They knew they were launching a game to a bunch of people who probably already had lots of stuff on the shelf. And what the Arcane Journals with Armies of Infamy do is they give you opportunities to remix stuff that already exists, create an army on a theme, and it's probably not something that you just already had. We didn't get. I think that's probably why we didn't get things like a Slayer army or Night Goblins or whatever, because I think they're meant to get people being like, oh shit, I got to buy some stuff because man, that's a great idea. I'm excited to do that. And that to me is like it is definitely they're trying to get you to buy stuff, but they're trying to get you to do it in a way that's you don't feel like you're being coerced to do it, and you kind of feel like they're getting they're incentivizing you to do it, which is I think a great way to sell and market and position a game or things that you want people to buy. And so I feel good about that. Also, Cathay, for the record, priced exactly the same as everything else.
Yeah.
Called it.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And even the big scary models like the Sentinel and the Balloon, which are very expensive, compare them to AOS. Like I don't know what it would be in British pounds, but in Canadian dollars, either of those models would have been well over $200. They're not, and like they're still expensive.
Yeah.
But they are clearly priced below what main studio is. So why? Right? Like, and that's something I would love to know. Like, why? Why does SDS price their stuff below the AOS and 40K price points and the kill point price points significantly? Like, not by a little bit, but by a lot. And even with the stuff that's brand new, Cathay.
Yeah, the Cathay Battalion box is a great deal.
It's wild.
It's a great deal for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think people missed out on that. The balloons, having now built a balloon, and comparing it to other things that have existed, it's definitely a pretty prodigious bit of kit. For sure. Yeah. I think also they were smart about it. It's really the same sprue like 3 times, 4 times, or something like that. Like it's like they're really smart about it in that like they didn't have to tool another sprue. They just were like, okay, cool, we're just going to create this 4 times, like, and wrap it around. And that's really really similar to what you saw with the infantry box, where the infantry of 20, 40, whatever it is just the same sprue, 6 times, and then the other same sprue 2 times. So it's
are they solid
sprues.
Bodies? Like, are they bodies and arms for the Cathay troops?
No, you have to. No, you got to build the bodies. You got to build the arms, and also there's the sticking point on the arms is pretty rubbish. Like it's not a peg; it's some sort of weird, very unsure of itself triangle. more of an essence of a shape than an actual shape. But yeah, also a shout out. There's also 5 male heads, 5 female heads per sprue. So if you wanted to, you can do your entire force as like either male or female if you wanted to, or you can mix it up. So yeah, like there's a lot of stuff in there that I think is also they're clever. The manufacturing of it has also been clever as well. So yeah, the match play guide though, I think overall the other response that we saw from a lot is people were saying things like, "Oh, it's too much. There'll be too much going on in the games. It'll be too much happening, and there's too many points on the board. It'll go away from the concept of what Old World is, which is just killing stuff." And having run an event now, and I'm going to make a separate video about this, but my quick TLDR is play with all the secondaries. It literally doesn't affect your game other than your game is more fun. That's the TLDR. But if there's anything you want to ask beyond that, feel free. But that's my takeaway, and I'll try and put that in more detail. The big thing that got talked about a lot is there's so many more points on the board, So people are like, there'll be bigger wins. From the limited data set of running one event, so it is limited data, what actually happened is people won, if they got a 20-0 or like basically a massive win, they won as much if you took away all the secondaries. Does that make sense? Like you got to scale the differential out because there's more points on the board, but if you took the secondaries away and used the old system, they would have just had the same blowout result because they had a blowout result. So that was interesting.
Yeah. So that's one of the, I wouldn't say concern, because like you said, fundamentally more fun. There's different ways to score points. But I think with victory points, when victory points are scored for killing stuff as well as for achieving secondaries, and they're all combined, like I think you do get a scenario where you might have win more, because obviously if you have models on the table, you can score at the end of the game, which is what a lot of them are, instead of being progressive. I think there's also an element of got to let this one play out a bit, because this was folks' first kick at the can. Literally was release day, they didn't even have, we had a couple weeks to digest those new missions. Armies are going to be built for a meta that is a different set of missions. People are going to take a little while to figure out, if you build to win secondaries, is that going to outweigh perhaps the loss of highly efficient killing power or incredible resilience, by having that one big Death Star? Does that do the two balance out, or can you actually start building to not only kill stuff but achieve some of these secondary objectives and win missions? And is that a path to victory potentially? And what do those armies look like? And I think we're going to have to, that's more of a wait and see how things develop situation, because I think there are ways to tweak how you score the secondaries, not necessarily what points you get for achieving them on the table, but literally how they work within a differential system that might help fix that a little bit that we've seen before. But I'm fully willing to play it as it lies.
I'd also encourage everyone to use all of the secondaries. The reason for that is that actually you diversify list writing very aggressively. For instance, with the cabbage trains as an example, you would think that would be the number one. That would have been my number one of secondaries if you were only going to play with them. I would play with strategic locations over everything else. Mainly because it makes you it ups the tempo of the game. So one of the things that we did happen was we did have quite a lot of wins, big wins, and the reason is because unlike previous Warhammer, if you and me played and I fired a cannon and I just took 150 points off something, well now you have to run your whole army at me and I could just sit there because I've won the game, right? I'm over the 100-point threshold. It's now 300 points. I do encourage everyone to do that, or 400 points to 2,600. But I do encourage everyone to do that. But but now that doesn't happen. If I shoot you with a cannon turn one and kill something that's 150 points, well, I haven't won the game. And then my opponent moves 2 core units onto strategic locations. Well, now they've just ticked up an additional 60 points. And then in the next turn, or in my cannon turn, if I don't kill anything else, now they get another 60 points. And now we've equaled and I haven't been aggressive. So everyone understands there's a real gun to your head to get into it, which is why we were seeing bigger blowouts, because everyone was like, oh, are you standing there? Because I'm fighting there. It's like, yeah, I'm fighting there. And actually, one of the key takeaways from any game system I've ever played, when talking to an audience or when playing games or running events, one of the main things people feedback to me is I want there to be some interactivity. That's what people say. I want to interact with my opponent. I want to play the game. And when someone stood there being like, I'm scoring points if you don't hit me, then you have to go hit them. And so you have to hit them early. So the games were having big blowouts. Everything was fighting. I sent you a bunch of picks.
Gorgeous.
And everyone was fighting. Unit champions were fighting off whoever. People flank charging. Everyone was wheeling infantry is really hard, actually. I was like, it is actually hard.
Yes.
I agree. That is a challenge. I would say with that. And I would say also, just as a last bit, because again, I've seen a lot of online pushback about this, which I think is weird. I was like, you would be completely ignoring all the changes intentionally written for infantry in the FAQ, and then not using all the secondaries. You would just be ignoring what they tried to do. They were here's a match play guide. There's places you stand with core infantry units, basically. You're like, okay, cool. they're like, also we've made it so infantry is much stronger at standing places. If you get charged, you get more attacks, right? If you get charged, you're better. If you charge, you're worse, right? And then you're like, I won't do that. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, then you're missing the forest for the trees, which I think is very weird. So yeah, and generally, go on.
No, it's just change, right? Like people just thing, like it is change, and it's an overwhelming amount of stuff. I think Games Workshop also probably did a disservice to a lot of people by not making a bigger deal of how big of a change this was. Hey guys, this is super cool. This is 1.5. We've taken all of your feedback and we're going to do some awesome stuff. And really, it was quite like the Warcom article was quite, I don't know, rote and perfunctory, and that was about it. And all of these things, to anyone who's really tuned into the game, all like Cathay, Match Play Guide, and Errata Fac, like we were all like thirsting for it. We knew they were coming. If you were a fan of the show, we've been talking about it for ages that this stuff was coming, and oh boy, it's here. But if you're just sort of casual, suddenly the game is like changed around you, and it's slightly different than what you were enjoying already, and and like that just doesn't feel great. Whereas like they could have really stressed how awesome this all is, and that didn't happen. I think the fact that they were jammed up against the Horus Heresy release is probably why all this stuff got
crushed together.
Crushed together. They wanted it in this quarter because it's the start of a new year. SDS is about to blow the friggin' doors off with Heresy and Cathay and all this happening all at the same time. So like, yeah, they're gonna have a good half. But yeah, so I think, needless to say, it's just resistance. And again, people getting out, playing it, I think would be good. I think we haven't said this, and probably should have been the first thing we said, which is this is a way better game. I think undoubtedly, like the combination of all of the changes that have been made, MPG, Errata, and the addition of Cathay, even
way better.
It's a better and by the way, before as much grumbling as I did, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted, and all that kind of stuff, still awesome. I loved it. I played so much of this game, right? So like now it's way better. So what? Like there's nothing to be mad about here.
No, not at all. No, it's way better. I saw the event around the weekend was only 12 people, but I saw 12 people walk away and be like, I've loved this weekend. And these are people who all have previously played in events, and they're all like, this is the best. I've had a great time. I'm going to go change my list. I'm going to go get some cabbage smashers. I'm going to there's a good conversation that what's elite infantry's job now. Like there's, like great conversation around that sort of stuff because there have been some losers from this update, but generally there's blocks of infantry fighting on the tabletop and people are having a good time. That's huge. That's all I'm going to say. Like I saw 12 people smiling at the end of the event. They were like, nope, yep, this is my Warhammer. I'm off to go play some more. So I'm super excited about more events. I've got another one coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm going to try and play in that one myself. I was going to play this weekend, but I was definitely too old to do that. But in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to try and get on the table. And actually, list writing is really hard as well. List writing. I can't wait to do some shows with you where we start breaking that down and having conversations around that. And also, I've got some data as well from secondary objectives. Secondary objectives, I'd say, the secret missions. Those are just nonsense, but they're fun to do. Like they're just they don't affect the game at all. Like someone's like, my secret mission was to do this, and you're like, did you do it? It's like, I forgot. Like I don't care.
Not quite sure.
Like I don't care, right? So yeah, generally pretty good. But I'll make a more in detail video about that as we go forward. So all those things, and I should also like to say that I think it's a much better game, which is great. So a much better game, but the end of the roadmap. So where is the future of the old world? Like, what is, the kind of, not even reading into the crystal domes what's going to be released, but we could talk about that.
Sure.
But, how do you feel about the growth, the health of the game? Like, these big explosions can sometimes get a lot of media hype, but then comes the tough work. You've built your Cathay army. Now you got to paint it. Well, number one, you got to build it. Number two, then you got to paint it. Then you got to get it on the tabletop. You're looking at, anywhere between 3 months to, a year and a half.
Or I don't know. There's definitely folks out there have taken their summer vacations to get their army ready. Like there are, but for the average human being, it's anywhere between 3 months and the rest of your life to get your Cathay army ready.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the hype around that will simmer down. No releases are in the schedule.
That we know of. There's a preview next week.
Oh, that's true. In a couple of weeks, we might we could already be wrong. That's crazy. And they have said this on Old World preview.
I think they strongly hinted that there was maybe some Old World content. I don't know if it'll be as gangbusters as what obviously Cathay was. And I think the headline is almost assuredly Chaos Dwarfs, which, for the record, of all the legacy PDFs, Chaos Dwarfs, even without Renegade stuff, completely cromulent. Especially now, like even more so now. So like with the changes to the fundamentals of the game. So anything that drops for Chaos Dwarves and AOS, I think will be very transferable to the old world. Probably at one point intentionally so. As in, like, I would suspect that what we're going to see from Chaos Dwarves will be an army that basically is a refresh or a redesign of units we've seen from Chaos Dwarf Army in the past, or the majority of the units will be like that. So I suspect if you like Chaos Dwarves and you're like, but I can't buy the models, you are about to have probably more things to buy.
I've literally had flames behind me for the entire time.
The whole time. Let's go.
Let's go. I mean, I'm personally very excited about that. It is only AOS, which is, I know, a lot of people very sad. Made me sad. What I did say, though, because I made a video about this, and I think you said, maybe mentioned you watched it, but one of the things I said about this is Chaos Dwarfs have had this very much like they've been outside in the rain looking in on the family gathering, no matter where they've been. Like, they're in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, they're just looking in the window like, I'm a real army. They're like, get out, little orphan boy. And then in AOS, they were a legend army for a couple of years. Like, but to be finally embraced into the fold of our game system, and become canonical, means that it gives more weight to them being available in Old World in the future. But where do you? Go on.
Sorry, just on the Chaos Dwarf thing. First of all, go watch that. I know lots of folks here probably not so hot on the AOS content, but I think Rob actually did a really wonderful job talking about the fact that Chaos Dwarves have been quietly announced, and also you've been alluding to it for months. Yes. That they're coming, and but just this idea of it being a faction that was left to the wayside. And not necessarily ever developed aside from, of course, Elmbly and Tamarcon, which actually was kind of an armies of infamy of its day of Chaos Dwarves. Mm-hmm. The version of Chaos Dwarves in that book are a specific group of Chaos Dwarves that fit into the narrative of the campaign of Tamarcon.
Yeah.
So like we actually never really saw, even in fantasy,
the Empire.
The representatives of the greater thing, which is what this will probably be, and I think the aesthetics of it are going to be really awesome, and I think it's just going to be, if you like Chaos Dwarves, look, legacy factions, renegade factions, they ain't ever going away, and I think it would be a great thing to get in, great way to get into AOS, into 40K or AOS for that matter. With this, and then also, what are some other neglected, fantasy armies that they just never, for whatever reason, went back to, despite them being awesome and evocative and detailed? Well, there's some DAWGs out there.
Well, so let's talk about the game state before we talk about that, because I think I'd like to I'd like to end us on like releases for sure. But But game state, how do you see like events, gaming, and everything happening now with the match play guide over the next few months? Like, you have the SBOT coming up as an example, Squarebase Toronto. Go check it out.
SBOTO.
Yeah, right down in the
didgeridoo.
In the didgeridoo. We've got it. We've got a channel one now. We've got our own, the didgeridoo. I'm going to send you a didgeridoo for your birthday.
Get a sound effect for the didgeridoo.
I don't know what hookah is or hookie or whatever, but I want to smoke some of that near a campfire.
Hookah.
Yeah. Yeah, and do some Didger with you. That'll be our old man thing.
Did you read? See, one is expanding lung capacity, and one is reducing it significantly. So
okay.
I think that's good. Yeah. A good old water pipe. I've spent a long time huffing on a hookah. They're delightful.
I don't know what one is.
Candied tobacco. Kids love it. Anyway, so getting to your point, I think right now, I think you said there's now the work begins. I think that's really, really true. Shout out community organizers of whatever stripe out there, whether or not you're like the friend who pesters your other friends to like get playing some old world, whether you're the person at your local club or game shop that organizes a night to play old world, or dare I say a league or an event, or maybe you're like crazy brain broken people like Rob and I, and you push for larger scale things like GTs or what have you. Mm-hmm. Now's the time to get out there and try and get people to pick up and play this game, because again, if they played it, a year ago and they were like, not for me. This isn't what I imagined. I think it's closer to what you imagined, folks. I think we're there now. I think we're very, very close to it. Certainly for me, it is. It feels like it. This is the time to like try and like pump some air into the balloon. Maybe unlike that beloved channel that we both hate watch all the time. Don't shit all over Old World and why it's dumb, and then wonder why no one wants to come to your events. That's maybe not the best way to lead the pack. I think coming from a place of an excitement and enthusiasm, that's where you want to be. And like don't dive in. And that's another thing. I think you mentioned a little bit of fatherly disappointment, perhaps, in community reactions out there. I think especially on Facebook, if that's where you're mixing it up, but I see it in Discord and other places too. And this probably works in other walks of life. And I know Rob doesn't always ascribe to maybe this approach, but for me personally, especially when I was doing a lot of the Renegade stuff and in other situations, it's fun to tee off on people who are clearly in the wrong. But I think a lot of the times the best way to de-escalate a situation is to just ask them why they think that. And like get them to expand a little bit, because almost every time that someone has reacted harshly to something I've said, and I try and dig a little deeper as to why they think that, I find out that it's like something that they might connect incorrectly to what I was saying. Maybe it was misunderstood. Maybe they were just pissed off at them in that moment. And usually you can start to have a human conversation. And never also underestimate the power of the fact that algorithms out there, like on Facebook, YouTube comments, and YouTube videos, are driven by engagement, and nothing engages more than rage bait. So if you're seeing a lot of negative comments, that's because it's literally being promoted to you. So that way you read it and get upset. And this is something that, as a person who spends more and more time living publicly on the internet, I've had to come to realize, is that the awful stuff rises to the top most of the time. Just be aware of that, because the majority of people don't comment. Only people who are super intensely passionate, either in a positive or a negative way, are the ones that comment. So like, be the positive one. If you like shit and you think it's awesome, say that you like it, you think it's awesome, and then eventually there's more of those voices than all of the fucking really grumpy people. That's it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So okay. Yeah. PSA. Be upbeat. So I see the future as being, we've got to put a lot of work in now, and there's a lot to like break down for sure. You've got to build your models. You got to paint them. You got to go on the tabletops. That's what you got to do. If you were going to go on Facebook and see what everyone else is doing, and you haven't built your models and painted them, go do that instead. Okay, head down, ass up, get it done. Right. That's a Rob motto. You take that with you as long as you need. But you need to get on with it. And we got to start running packs as well. Also, for free on maybe Didgeridoo below, or I don't know where. I ran an event this weekend, and it now has several little FAQs. And I'm sure me and Val will go over this in more detail and we'll add to it. Like I've noticed that I haven't, for instance, added on the deployment, for example, for baggage trains yet onto this, but there is a copy of the pack that I wrote this weekend, and an army list composition. I apologize, I made you go bright white there. Did not mean to make that happen.
Well, that's all right. My people will talk to your people after the show. That's fine.
So those are all available down there, and even the differential system. Shout out to Toby. This may get some adjustment in the future as on the master pack based on the points level you're going to run. But this is all there for free. Take it as your first shot. Oh, I've got me and the guys want to get together at the weekend. Well, here's some quick stuff.
Did you slap the Renegade Magic casting values adjustments in here?
I could absolutely, we'll put that at the bottom.
That's a great thing to fire in there, just because it's boring, but it just.
No, that's great. Let's absolutely do that. So that'll be a fun thing to add on. And also, I haven't talked to even Val about this. I was going to say this, so I apologize. But I was a bit like, it was only meant to be a quick 2 seconds. If you need something, there's something there. It's not perfect. It's not finalized, right? Yeah. It's just a thing that I ran at the weekend. I don't see me making any overt changes to this. This isn't heavy comp. This is just using the army composition rules slapped together, and then a bunch of stuff. Val, my friend, are you thinking of adding anything extra, taking stuff away for stuff in the future? Not had time yet to kind of break it down and have a quick, like a real look at it, because it's been all I've done for a couple of weeks. It's been real quick, real fast, real dirty.
Oh yeah, amazing.
So, but like, do you think that we need more than this yet, or should we let everything lie and see people just play it out?
Well, I think play it as she lies. I think there's even a few things in there that you did that I probably wouldn't even bother with.
Like tell me.
Oh well, like the mission where you roll and on a 1, you got to put a guy in reserve.
Yeah.
I think just let him roll a 1. I think we misread that actually on our review, where we saw that it was in there. Both got upset that mission still existed, and then didn't realize that it was quite a non-issue. I think. But I understand if you would rather have 0 randomness pregame, fine, no big deal. And then outside of that was like the only thing that you did change, right? And then there's the just how differential tables actually come down, like so where we land on how that differential should look, because Games Workshop has now published their own official 6-0 differential table, which is where, like I've said in the past, where 20-0. So have you ever heard people about 20-0? And if you've read the match play guide, basically how much you beat your opponent by determines how big of a win you got. And so if you beat your opponent by a lot of points, even if they've killed some of your stuff, if you've killed them more, you've had a bigger win than if you both killed a similar amount of stuff, essentially. And in the Games Workshop one, there's basically 6 tiers of loss or victory. And then I think in tournaments over the years, they realized that doesn't give enough like sort of stratification between players that are playing the best versus playing very good. And so that's why instead of doing 6-0, most tournaments run 20-0, so 20-0, so that there's just more potential outcomes in a game score. The thing is, I'm seeing people and tournament organizers interested in running 6-0 in singles, and I including our friends at the Capital City Bloodbath. I'm pretty sure are just going to run that raw. And okay, I think I'm willing to let them see how that pans out. But quite literally, I think we've already learned this lesson. So landing on, and I think I'm just probably going to follow the good work that you and Toby have done. Landing on a good differential box for 20-0 will, I think, be one of the first steps in that. And I think I like what I saw there. And then for me, though, if I'm finding that it looks like tournaments are becoming mostly just sort of win more and that people don't really need to build for secondaries, then I think I would start to look at potentially the sort of the ninth age style of doing secondaries, which is basically if you win the secondaries, score more points on secondaries than your opponent, then you get a bonus either 3 or 4 points, and your opponent loses the 3 or 4 points in that 20-0. And I think that creates a different way of approaching secondaries where it actually maybe carves out it as a win path rather than a win more. But I don't know. I'm very willing to see how this all pans out and what people want to do.
Yeah, me too. Also, the first of many, Val also is going to do a set as well, maybe an age symmetric set.
This is so nice.
There's a free to download PDF. You can see it here. as well as some actual cards you can buy if you want to. But this has got a bunch of terrain maps and other stuff. So if you're interested, so those are all, we'll kapachow those or whatever, didgeridoo them. But yeah, those are all up on the Honest Wargamer site for now. But we are maybe, unbeknownst to Val, I'm just telling him now, we might be redoing all the sites soon, hopefully. But for now, they're here on the Squarebase section, and you can pick them up as... It's either a free PDF to just download, which many people did over the weekend, or they're cards which you can buy. They come in a nice like card pack thing.
Right. Is the 4A card pack still available as well?
Yeah, that's available as well. For sure.
In stock? Because both of them, these are. I mean, not to be a shill, but I'm going to shill. They're beautiful. And a shout out to Tom, I think, who did the design on these, and like he's just world class, man. Like the stuff that he does is so nice. So yeah, if you want some really cool cards, some table game aids, hit the didgeridoo below. They're really, really sweet. And kudos to like getting that out in like milliseconds fundamentally. So like that's really, really cool. And yes, or I intend for Squarebase to open Toronto, for example, for that to be part of your ticket. So you will get a nice fancy Tom designed mission pack, and that's just a cost that will be part of your ticket, and some other trinkets and goodies in there as well. So that's one of the things. And then also, if you just want them, you can order them.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool. Yeah, I think also really fun as an initial thing, especially as I redo rivers and then maybe start doing some other stuff. We could end up with quite a spicy amount of mission packs for people to choose from, which I'm personally excited about. But also, other people around the world are going to be doing the same thing, right? They're going to be either creating their own like mission packs because they want the game to be more balanced. They're going to be creating their own mission packs because they want the game to be more narrative. They're going to be creating their own mission packs because they want to, I don't know, just generally be kings of their own little fiefdom, whatever the situation might be.
Or just doing what the locals want, right? Ultimately, like this is a very community-driven thing. So like if your player group wants to play the game in a certain way, just play it that way. You can worry about like uniting the tribes later. We just need some tribes out there, I think that's totally legit if it's still not hitting the right notes for you. But we were talking about the future of the game, and then we got into our TO navel gazing. Probably driven by me.
No. I think the future of the game is getting everyone out on the tables.
Hell yeah!
Like the game's the best it's ever been. Right? Yeah. Here's some tools that are freely available from Squarebase. Right?
I see what you were doing now.
Right? So like we are giving you the tools, right? Like you don't have to do any of the work. You just have to like say, hey guys, let's go meet, play the game. We got the shit for free from the lads. Off we go. So we're enabling you to do it. But that's the next thing that I think that we need to start seeing because we might end up, now this gets us into the next conversation, we might end up with like a dearth or a quiet time where we don't get quite as much information, we don't get as much delivered to us, we don't get as much, we won't get another Cathay or like a new army release, maybe for 10 years. So, so really, now's the time to be getting people on the table, building the community, building the excitement, playing the game. But for releases, which is what you're interested in, what is your hot read? And same comments below. What's your hot take and hot reads on releases?
So first of all, I think we've all assumed that it would be a real slowly developing game, right? Mm-hmm. I think that was a fair assumption that most people had. I didn't until I think you had said sometime in the middle of last year that their goal was to have everything released by June of this year. Yeah. They did that. And I never thought that was going to be the case. It has been by most games, period, not just fantasy standards, maybe not by all Games Workshop standards. This has been a fire hose of content for 18 months. Like we're talking, that's a book every other month, right? There's nine books. Actually, we're up to 10. So more than a book a month.
One thing I'd also like to say as well, the most coherent and planned out release schedule that SDS has ever done.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, there can be zero criticism of SDS, and as far as again, I want to do like a real nuts and bolts of this someday video where I'm just analyzing just the endeavor that's here. We're probably talking hundreds at this point of SKUs, or at least over 100 like individual items that have been launched. Probably I'd say 100 to 200, I would bet. To get these armies back out. Each one of those boxes had to be designed. Each one of those things had to be made. Like it's wild. It's so much work, and it's only half of the game, really. These are just the core armies. So basically what I'm saying is I am very skeptical at the naysayers out there who seem to think that, well, this is it. And I understand they blew up the world once. All right. We all have, well, the people who are there have a bit of PTSD about this, and they just assume it's all going to end at some point. But I see no reason to think that they are going to suddenly go from basically a piece of content for Old World every other month to nothing or very, very sparse. I find that super hard to believe. And I would think that we're still going to see a couple of releases in the form of campaign books,
Arcane Journals.
Arcane Journals, which, by the way, like the way that this kind of went under the radar, but like they described what the Cathay and Arcane Journal is. The big takeaway was, there's no new units. Excuse me. But what I think not a lot of people talked about was it's gonna have rules for different game modes. It's gonna have like a scenario, like certainly a narrative scenario
Arcane
for
Journal
Cathay.
2. Or like
Cathay's second Arcane Journal, yeah. Like they're proper Arcane Journal with like items and an army of infamy and stuff. So I think what it's going to be is its own, as opposed to the Arcane Journal so far, which have been mostly focused on the armies. It feels like the second Cathay Arcane Journal will be that kind of campaign style book, where it's got like, here's some rules for modes of play, here's some scenarios around Cathay and why they're in the old world and that kind of a thing. That's the way it feels. And I see no reason why they couldn't crush one of those bad boys out on a semi-frequent basis with a couple different armies of infamy for a couple different factions.
So my hot take, my hot take is we could get one a month. Like,
right?
that sounds gnarly. But like we could now, I'm not saying that that's the case, but I expect those Arcane Journals, because there's also this really interesting thing where for SDS as a very anarchic ADHD portion of the business who do not operate via rhyme or reason, they'll just be like, oh, new Necromunda. And you're like, okay. They're like, new Blood Bowl team. You're like, well, was it on the schedule? They were like, we don't have a schedule. The Old World had to be the first time they...
What day is this?
Yeah, like, were we releasing a Titan today? I don't know. So I feel like the Old World was the first time they actually got their shit together. And, let's be really critical of how badly they kind of treated Middle-earth in the past, how badly they treated Heresy in the past with like what seemed to be almost leaderless or a very anarchic leader at the head of the organization. And seeing as I know who exactly I'm talking about, he's also brilliant. He's very creative, but I feel like someone has wrestled the reins away from the head of SES and is like, do you know what? I'm going to make maybe even a year plan. And he's like,
a Google Calendar. Okay?
Yeah, they're like, what?
I'm just going to plug, you just keep doing your thing. I'm just going to put them in the calendar. Don't be scared. Yeah. Just going to go into the calendar and everything's going to be good.
Yeah. So I think that the success of the Old World has definitely reinforced the idea that they can have a schedule. They can be more organized. They can set goals and they can say, this is what we're going to do. We've just seen a roadmap for the Heresy come out as well. So what I think is interesting about that is on their roadmap for the Heresy is they've said that they are going to do frequent 48-page Arcane Journals, right? Frequent 48-page where they're going to like take a snapshot of a certain section of history and they're going to like give you some stuff for it, right? And now I'm like, they can do that for Old World. Like,
they're basically pamphlets, like it's not, there's nothing really aside from the writing time, like what would hold them back from doing that?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like, and I think also it makes more sense than the big black books or big, Tamrakans of years past. I want more Tamrakans, but those are probably a couple of year-long projects, right? Whereas they can get a couple of teams together and be like, listen, let's make a story about high elves versus some orcs and goblins at some point in the world. Let's give them a bunch of art, some extra magic items, a couple of scenarios. Let's theme it. Let's give... And because these armies of infamy have not been like archetypes. They've not been like, when you play orcs and goblins, there is sometimes a nomadic war and there is sometimes a troll horde. Instead, they've been like, it's a specific nomadic war.
Yeah.
It's a
this is Ugdruz and this, this is Kiknik and
It's been specific. So I would expect us to see tons of specific forces as opposed to these more like archetype style buildings that you see in some of the other game systems, and then just see them smashed together in these like fun campaign books. And I actually, if someone in the comments do the math for me, if we take the 10 existing real factions, because obviously they won't do the others, which is a shame, and then if you put one against the other, like, you know, and then you make that many books. I don't even know how many books that is, but it's a lot. You know, like Empire versus the 9 other factions, and Cathay versus the other 9 factions, and Dwarfs versus the other 9 factions. That's actually a fucking lot of books. You can, and actually, it's super exciting. So I think that we might see something similar to that in the release schedule. And then you can also just throw a character out, right? This is SDS at the end of the day. They love just being like, here's a resin kit of a dude. We just made him.
So this is the thing, right? Like, so, and on top of that, there are a lot of kits that are still on the shelf, especially from the Forge World catalog, that are just there. They just have them. They have them in reserve. Maybe, I assume they still have the ability to make them. You know, so for each of these Arcane Journals, they could say, well, here's Manon's Blades, or like here's the Ironsides for Nuln, you know, or, you know, fill in the blank for any number of different fantasy miniatures and models that have come out over the years. And also stuff, for the record, that has been made for AOS that is no longer sold for AOS. That was probably sculpted or designed originally for 8th edition fantasy and stuff. Like, they just have a big archive of things that, for an Arcane Journal, for a theme, they could just pick a model and design something around it, like you just said, or come up with something new, sculpt up a couple of resin things, or honestly, they're fully capable of it. Plastic special characters or whatever, and drop it in. And I hope, in my heart of hearts, that as Old World gets its legs under it, because they pay a lot of lip service to this idea of us being in a very specific and a very specific time and place. Maybe that's the next 18 months. We get this story told over a series of these Arcane Journals that really grounds us in this lead up to the Great War against Chaos, and like stuff going down in the Border Princes and up near Halsham or whatever, the fishing village that got wrecked by the Chaos incursion is. Like, maybe that's where now the actual story of the Old World will start to come together and take shape. Maybe that'd be cool. But also, there's the opportunity to just move the camera around. Like, we could have an Arcane Journal Vampire Wars, for example. You can take, you know, this thing that for its history has been very timeline agnostic. Warhammer Fantasy Battles was. All the special characters you could field in a given army were from all over the timeline, just like Total War is. It's not grounded in a specific moment of time. And Horus Heresy too. Horus Heresy takes place over a long and human years period of time, but they move locations and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. They have a lot of runway, and they have clearly very creative, passionate people who can do really cool things with this, much beyond my own imagination. So yeah, I would expect to see something exactly like what you just described.
What do you think? You got any hot takes or any guesses or anything you'd love to see? And same to the comments down below. Any models and or ranges you'd like to see over the next year? I guess obviously the hot topic now that Cathay is out is everyone's like, okay, Kislev next, because they got announced together.
Yeah,
they got announced together, and then literally 6 months before Cathay came out, let's never let them forget, they were like, we do not plan on releasing Cathay anytime soon. Okay.
They said the same. Yeah. About Cathay?
Yeah, they said that about Cathay, if you remember.
Yeah. Yes, they did.
So,
well, it was like no immediate plans. So we immediately called out the fact that no immediate plans could mean like literally this week, could mean this year, could mean this decade. Like those would all work in Games Workshop parlance as immediate.
Yeah. But however, I do think Kislev is maybe years away. I think that's not something likely. Instead, I think we're more likely to see mercenary style stuff. There's lots of rumors abound about Dogs of War, as an example.
Dogs of War, okay.
So lots of rumors abound about that. But then obviously these Arcane Journals. But I think Kislev probably far off the beaten track. But I agree with you, like you said earlier. I think there was already initial plans that centering Kislev or that portion of the world around the game around that. So I think what we're going to see, instead of a return to factions that we know of, we're going to see new factions, new units, new armies. I think that's likely where we're to see the next few years go, I think.
So it depends on how seriously they've taken the schism. And again, the schism is that AOS models are for AOS, SDS, so like old world models are for old world. And so if this whole thing was designed and strategized around it being a combined system, so like you can use AOS models or to play old world and vice versa, which is I 100% believe was the case. Well, now whatever they had planned is no longer funded with IP and models and miniatures, right? It doesn't have the stuff that they thought they had in the pipeline isn't there. So it might be forcing them to pivot and create and design because they're completely capable of making sick plastics. We see it in Horse Heresy. We just saw it with Cathay, etc. So they're going to have to pivot and start building up more because stuff like Chaos Dwarves isn't an old world release. It's an AOS release. That being said, I think if we assume that the scope got broadened roughly 15 minutes after they finally released this game 18 months ago. And if we assume that 2.0 probably is about a year and a half away, because they tend to release new editions every 3 years, then that to me gives enough runway that I think something like a Kislev, that feels like perhaps a launch army in the future and not necessarily a now army. I think we've heard and seen out there. It's always interesting. Have a look and see if you have any favorite STL makers. If you see them get a cease and desist for something that they're making, like for example with Chaos Dwarves, Lost Kingdoms got C&D'd hard for a lot of their stuff, which was, by the way, not even like there were no Chaos Dwarves in the GW lineup. So seeing like where GW is enforcing IP stuff is an interesting take. I think the Dogs of War are an obvious pick for a future edition. Just looking at the map, like so when there's a wicked map, we should do another show on the map because they've actually changed it again.
I like the map. The map is very cool, and the map I think has given us constant insights into things that they are planning and then change the plans. They're like, change the map. The map lady, because we know it's a map lady, Holly, shout out to Holly, she's amazing. The map lady must be like, fuck off.
Fuck off, mate.
Crosses a bit out, puts another bit in.
they also, I think there's also just a hilarious breakdown between SDS and whoever fires off the updates to the marketing sites, because they definitely accidentally tipped their cards a few times about what was there. But I think right now Talea is pretty well developed on the current map game state map.
Yeah,
Norska is a lot more developed than the current game state map. So like, and then I don't even know how Cathay's incorporated because it's way out east, obviously. So like there are. I think those two things, Norska and the Talaeans.
Are you saying Norska's map 2? Are we getting map 2, the Eastern map?
Oh, well, Cathay already has its map. Cathay has a map out east. But the official Old World, if you go to oldworld.com or whatever it is, there's no Cathay on it. There's just a dragon boat because we're only in the Old World. So that's very important. But there's lots of Easter eggs on there. I think vampires. Potentially Mousselon.
Yeah, there's been rumors about that.
You've been pushing that one. I hope I hope that's true.
I think I also heard a rumor a while ago about a plastic Chaos Mammoth, which I told you about. And I heard that rumor, and now with these like semi Arcane Journal style releases, I could see that being something that they just like throw in. They're just like, here you go. This is what it is. But again, we have no idea. We don't know. We're just speculating. But what I'm saying is, importantly, is I don't think it's an end of the content hose.
Oh, absolutely not. That is if that's the thesis, I am with you.
Yeah, I suspect. And that's not anything I know. That just might be what I suspect. I'm very hopeful it's not the end of the content hose. But either way, that's fine because we've now got 19 armies to go and build, paint, put on the table, and play in the awesome new game structure. So, like, sometimes the conversation, the hype, around a thing. I tend to find this sometimes a little bit with like new release stuff. Is there'll be a bunch of people who make new release content, as an example, and then they never talk about the game again until the next new release thing. And you're like, okay. But it's, you've got to put the work in. You've got to build that bedrock foundation, run the events, get people out there, go play the games, get your models painted, which I think is super exciting. So that's going to happen, but I think it's not necessarily the end of the hype. I think there's still more hype to go.
Well, we're still here, Rob. We're still here, having a good time, being excited, playing games, doing events. Check out the didgeridoo for our major ones upcoming. And I think, it's a new game, man. Like, this should be I think that was maybe why you were bummed by some of the discourse around it. I think hopefully this is the celebration episode that we all were craving. Unabashed enthusiasm. I do not think that the content hose is going to turn off. They have so much in the bag as far as what they can pull from. It's been working so much that they can grab from, and these guys clearly like what they're doing. So I think we're just going to get lots of stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you know what I'm going to do? Is I'm going to take a quick journey on this map after the show and see what little nuggets. I mean, one of the things that stood out to us very early was the moot appeared.
Okay,
the moot halflings confirmed. Okay,
you always use the we on that one, but I must say that you are the one who was very excited for the mood.
Give me halflings or I riot. Okay, give me halflings or I riot. At least a halfling mercenary company. What's wrong with that? Like, what more can I ask for?
Get a little lumpen coops hot pot cooking. Hell yeah,
you know it. And there's someone in SDS who's got like a short person like fascination. You get a lot of that necromunda.
Clearly.
You got some little dudes popping out, so I'm excited about that as well.
As far as speculation is concerned, one thing I'm not sold on necessarily, because of what you said with lead times and what I was saying with the schism and the fact that they probably need to now scramble to make new plastic kits. Cathay was always going to be there. His level will be there in the future. Do you think we have any like plastic or even resin surprises that are new coming up? Like, for example, if Dogs of War came out, would that just be a full metal range, or do you think that they actually might have some kits secretly coming for us?
At this stage, it must be very clear that like Old World just blows Necromunda out of the water. As in return on investment for those guys, and they'll make a Necromunda model about just fucking anything, any guy. Just any guy. So I really do think that we'll just be seeing just random models, little kits, along with Arcane Journals constantly. Now, I could be wrong on that front, but I don't see why they wouldn't. Most of the characters that they've released, they've just been like, here's some dude. And you're like, I don't even know who this dude is. You're like, hey, he's Cecil. You know him. Cecil. Fucking Cecil. And you're like, I don't know who Cecil is. Why is this the only thing you're selling from Bretonia? Cecil. I don't what's going on?
Okay. And where is Kicknick?
Yeah.
Aside from in the AOS range. But yeah.
Someone was like, we've got an orc. We're going to dress him in some goblin clothes. What are you thinking? Everyone's like, yeah, release him. He's cool. So I think maybe they've moved Tony away. That's the head of SDS. They've moved him away from the schedule. And now they've been like, Tony, you got any fun ideas? He's like, little guys, get them in there. Some shorties.
More shorties. More short gangs.
So let us know in the comments below what you think we're going to see over the next 6 months to a year. There is as Val was quite rightly pointed out, we've also got a preview show in a couple of weeks as well. But after that, next week, after that, we've got a ton of armies to break down. We're going to do, I was thinking we should do a poll in the Discord. So the Patreon Discord.
We've never done Bretonia or Tomb Kings. So maybe it's time.
No! Well, Bretonian people are going to be pissed. I'm going to tell them they got to paint loads of peasants. So they're going to hate that.
They're so good. So peasants to the front. We can call it the Peasants Revolt. I'm excited. All right, okay, we'll do that. Fine. Peasants are revolting. Yes, they are, sir.
Val, you got any shout-outs before we head out today?
No, shout out to everyone who has been watching because obviously with all the excitement, we had real big uptick. Thank you so much to all the patrons out there who signed up and joined us, and to all the people sticking it out in the SBot 360, which is a stale piece of bread now, playing the old meta. And there are still people soldiering on. We're going into week 4. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who will be the forever champion of Old World 1.0. We'll find out in a couple weeks.
Let's go. Super exciting. Thanks for watching Square Base. Stay Square Blast. See you soon. Bye-bye.